Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of Coalition Conversations. I am your host, Melissa Tallman. Just a reminder, CPA represents American businesses and the hardworking men and women who are committed to American manufacturing, agriculture, labor, and working for a prosperous America. Lately, we've been busier than ever before, researching, educating, and advocating for several key components that affect each and every one of us living, working, and consuming in the United States. Please take a moment. Visit our site to see the latest updates. Better yet, sign up for CPA's Daily Dose or weekly recap to get our news delivered directly to your inbox. I'm excited today to have a special guest host, Ken Rapoza, as he interviews Doug Berger. Doug is a team leader of Industry Reimagined 2030. He has 30 years of experience leading business transformation and disruptive growth in manufacturing and supply chains. Doug co-founded the NX Gen group, who's considered catalyst for realizing breakthrough impact from Industry 4.0. He's also the author of The Breakthrough Mind. Welcome to Coalition Conversations, Ken and Doug. How are you?
Hey, Doug. Thanks, Melissa. Hey, Doug, good to see you again. So let's get started.
Great.
Okay, so Doug, for our viewers out there, I know you're not a policy wonk, that's our job, but the recent passing of the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act has a provision in there called the Trade Act of 2021, where it takes a hammer to the China trade war tariffs, among other things. So in a world where tariffs go dark, let's pretend for a second that happens, how does a small to mid-sized company that serves as a widget maker for a Ford Motor Company or General Electric survive against China, or even Germany for that matter? I think this is at the heart of what Industry Reimagined is all about. So if you can introduce that to us, please do.
Great. So let me introduce Industry Reimagined as kind of the backdrop for then answering your question. So Industry Reimagined is bringing about a sea change in the national narrative around industry and manufacturing. There's a prevailing view out there that industry is in inevitable decline. So I talk to people who don't believe we're in inevitable decline, but they think everyone else, like the prevailing view, is one of inevitable decline. And inside that prevailing view, we make unconscious decisions about how we manufacture. We make unconscious decisions when we look at entering the workforce. We make unconscious decisions about the economy. So Industry Reimagined is about, one, surfacing this hidden hand of inevitable decline and shifting it to be one of vibrant opportunity. So that, and then enacting the right kinds of actual boots on the ground programs that deliver on opportunities for mostly small and medium-sized enterprises. So there really are a lot of opportunities that are out there. It's what I call the future is happening now. It's just not widely known and widely scaled. So when we look at it from that perspective, we can see opportunities to bring a much more vital future to U.S. industry. All right, but the challenge is spotting them and scaling them. And as we go on in the interview, I'd like to talk about some of the specific opportunities that we've identified.
Right. One thing I like about Industry Reimagined, Doug, we've spoken about this before, and I think our members are like this too, because a lot of them are in the small to mid-sized business space, is that it's not waiting for government action. It's looking for solutions for those who operate in the middle of the supply chain. I'm reading this right, Doug?
Yeah, that's exactly. Now, the government has a role.
Mm-hmm.
The government clearly has a role in leveling the playing field, in removing disincentives. There's a clear role. And as we've seen with some of the most recent executive action and the recent legislation that's passed by the Senate, there's really a tipping point in the recognition of that government really can play an enabling role. But at the end of the day, it is the decisions made by executives and owners of large companies all the way down to small companies. All right, it's the decisions they make about investing in capital, investing in social capital. That's ultimately where we're going to revitalize manufacturing.
Right, right. Berger is not about waiting for government action. I get it. He's about private, independent action. You can't wait for them forever to protect critical supply chains. The private sector has to care about it themselves. And the question is, Doug, do they care about it? I mean, I think the small and middle guys are, but they're selling to the big guys. They're selling to Ford. They're selling to General Electric. So there could be a disconnect there. Where is the connect?
So here's the evidence, all right? So a colleague of mine, Harry Mosier, just recently wrote in June a 2020 data report on the state of reshoring and foreign direct investment. And over the past decade, the data says we've brought into the United States 1 million jobs. Now, part of that is reshoring, meaning bringing foreign manufacturing back to the United States. That is foreign direct investment. But from the point of view of the U.S. economy and the U.S. workforce, it really doesn't matter who is generating the investment. What matters is that, in fact, the work is being done in the United States. And so we've brought back, 1 million jobs. And from a point of view of vibrant opportunity, there's still a $900 billion balance of trade deficit. And a lot of that is still in the wheelhouse of our opportunity. And so one of the things that Industry Reimagined is doing in support of that effort is we're working with the Association for Management Excellence to create a program to make U.S. companies more cost competitive with imports using modern manufacturing technology, using, if you will, lean manufacturing technology. So it's not a cost-cutting modality. It's actually making companies operate much more effectively, raising their level of world-class performance. And as a result of doing that, they're going to be more cost competitive.
What is that, Doug? Is that more like, is that just like a different type of equipment, like maybe in generic drug making, we talk about advanced manufacturing in that space where, let's say a specific tank can be used for more than one drug instead of one or whatever. I don't know. I'm not in that industry, but explain to me what that is, because what exactly, because it's not cost cutting, as you said, but it's advanced manufacturing. How do you explain advanced manufacturing to someone who's kind of maybe thinking about it, but also thinking, I don't have, millions of dollars to invest in all new equipment.
Right.
But maybe I have to if I want to compete. I want to compete against Asia.
It's interesting when you look at the data behind productivity. Only less than 1/3 of productivity is actually accounted for by capital investment. Where most productivity happens, in my view, all right, is in the people and process side. You have a motivated workforce, you're going to have a more productive company. You're using modern business processes, you're going to have a more productive company. And then technology becomes an enabler. If you just put technology into the same old style, you don't get the productivity advantages. So when you think about productivity and when you think about cost competitiveness as being fundamentally about people and process, that then becomes available to every size company, small companies, medium companies, and large companies.
And the goal there is you're essentially making a widget cheaper than you would have otherwise, and that makes you more profitable. That makes you more competitive against Mexico or against Asian firms and against Germany, for example. Am I right?
Yeah. Not only does it reduce the, if you will, cost of goods sold, but it also improves your manufacturing capacity. So therefore, you're able to generate more revenue without necessarily a capital-intensive expansion. So all of that contributes to becoming a much more cost-effective company.
In your Reimagined 230 paper, you wrote, and I quote, "We found we could become competitive enough to reverse offshoring and balance the goods trade deficit, rapidly pivot and distribute decision-making because we had to. We experienced the tangible benefits of multi-company collaboration. Exponential change is reaching the tipping point." What is the tipping point that you're referring to here?
Terrific. So one of the things implicit in what you just said, is we actually, during COVID, created new collaborative models of companies working together in unprecedented ways. So that and the agility with which people were able to make personal protective equipment, from Ford making it, General Motors, even if they were close to being in the business of that, making respirators. So we've demonstrated, though surprised, that the U.S. Spirit is for being agile and entrepreneurial is still very much alive and well. So that's one thing that sometimes we forget. That we think mostly in terms of kind of mass production, but a lot of the U.S. economy has an agility that's unmatched. So that's one aspect of kind of what we can call a tipping point. Another aspect is when we think about this narrative of inevitable decline and shifting the narrative to a vibrant opportunity, there are a couple of tipping points in the narrative. So one tipping point in the narrative is we, over the last generation, came to believe that the future of the United States was the service economy. And what we've now realized is the service economy left millions of people struggling with minimal skill service jobs, people who in a manufacturing economy would have had middle-class lifestyles. So that's an area where we've really recognized that unintended consequences of thinking in terms of the service economy. There's another area that has been written about very recently in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, the doctrine that Milton Erickson authored back in the 1950s that said the only improper role for the corporation is maximizing profit. Well, now there's a tipping point such that ESG is on the agenda of every publicly traded company. It's on the agenda of the board.
Okay, so now that we're talking about ESG, let's talk about climate change, which is the Biden administration's favorite topic other than economic inclusion, diversity and inclusion in the economy. And one thing you have as a goal is to reduce the environmental footprint of some American manufacturing. I think the goal was as much as 30% reduction.
Correct.
We at CPA, we like to call the global supply chain the global pollution chain. And I'm thinking, if you got companies that are making a widget and they're able to do it with less of a carbon footprint, does that make manufacturing in the United States either more profitable or more interesting? And if you could speak on that.
Sure. Well, I think of the environmental footprint as beyond merely CO2 reduction. Now, it's critical. That is the most critical area where we have to reduce the footprint, but it's not the only one.
Right. It could be plastic swimming around in the Pacific, for example. Any
waste stream is leaving an environmental footprint. Now, there are two very interesting things that have surfaced only in the last few years. One is that as we use Industry 4.0 type approaches of more real-time control and artificial intelligence to optimize production and make production more efficient, we're also discovering that what you get as along free is you get a more environmentally friendly production process. So making production more efficient also drives more efficient energy utilization and drives down waste byproducts at the same time. So that's one interesting side effect that's happening from Industry 4.0. Another interesting effect that's happening is we have advanced manufacturing that's able to now modularize or what used to be large-scale processes. So we used to talk economy of scale. Now what we're actually seeing is we can modularize chemical processes. We can modularize and distribute energy processes. And in doing so, again, that reduces the environmental footprint, that shortens the supply chain, that makes suppliers, gives us the ability to have suppliers much more localized to where products are actually utilized. So that's where technology is actually working very much in our favor at scale to really have a contribution to reducing environmental footprint.
We just have to hope that those processes don't get
they will. When it comes to environmental footprint, that's a global win. We want everybody reducing their environmental footprint.
Right. You want to beat them to it over here, though. At least beat them to it. And Doug, in your book, The Breakthrough Mind, you set out to challenge yourself and business executives to do it in 1 hour. And this is about streamlining, productivity, speed, and Industry Reimagined is all about doing it in 1 hour, if I'm not mistaken. So talk about that and tell me, how long does it take maybe to mold plastics or to make a widget? Does it take 20 hours, and how do I get it down to 10? And why is that important? Why is that an important part of reimagining industry?
Well, let's put aside, I think there are two ideas that I put forth in the book. One idea was fast tracking things. And the other idea is thinking at scale. So there are two things, so when we look at this cost competitiveness, all right, what we're talking about is working with AME to create a fast track approach where a small, medium manufacturer or a given manufacturing plant in a large company could become cost competitive in 12 to 18 months, whereas conventional thinking would say it might take you 3 to 5 years. And so that's one area of fast tracking. We've got skills shortages that are well recognized, skills shortages where companies can't hire welders or CNC or mechatronics people, yet but we're not thinking about how to fast track people into specific skill sets. So we're working with SMA and Tooling U to begin to create a program, the piece parts of which already exist. All right, how do we organize them as Lego blocks, if you will? How do we organize things such that which used to take 5 years or 3 years, we can now do in 9 months or 15 months. So that's where breakthrough thinking is coming to play, is creating new collaborative models, is thinking in terms of fast track. And I'm working with a number of organizations who've accomplished really tremendous things. And I'm challenging them to say, hey, you've done great things with 50 organizations, 50 communities over the last 8 years. Let's talk instead of 50, let's talk about 500. And how do we have you impact 500 communities? So all of a sudden, when you start to think at scale, all right, it challenges you to think about things in a very, very different way. And so, that we're bringing that kind of thinking of both the challenge to scale, but we're also bringing, if you will, the know-how of how do you go about taking something that really works, but it really works in a low volume way to improve our vibrant opportunities. How do we take those and scale them?
Right. And it is about speed sometimes, because sometimes you say, well, we need to have this product line. Let's talk about a critical supply chain that you hear about a lot since Biden's been president, or even in the last few years of Trump. We need to make certain generic drugs in the United States. We have to have more of those. Well, it's going to take years to build a factory. It's going to take years to build a lab. We can't wait years. We can't wait years. And that's what Industry Reimagined is all about. We're not going to do it in 2 years. We're going to do it in a year. We're going to cut that down. Am I right?
Well, if you look, this is one area where there's something we can learn from China. All right. When COVID was early stages, China built entire hospitals in 2 weeks. So this,
right, but they fell down with the first termite bite.
This is an area where government can really be an enabler. All right. So when you look at how long it takes to build a plant, there's an enormous amount of permitting. There's an enormous amount of regulation that you have to go through. A lot of that, of course, is at the federal level and the state level. So we can streamline that without cutting corners. If we just, again, in this case, we need new collaborative models about how government agencies collaborate for the benefit of now fast-tracking approval of manufacturing facilities.
Right. Doug, Industry Reimagined, you have a target of 2030, if I'm correct. And what sectors of the economy would you say are best equipped to get where you'd like, where you want them to go in the next 9 years?
Well, we're giving a lot of attention, if you will, to semiconductors, to battery plants, to pharmaceutical companies, and rightly so. Okay, those are the areas where if we fall behind, that's where we're concerned about the security of the United States and the military and a lot of our fundamental capabilities in that regard. But if you look at where most of the manufacturing, we have over 300,000 manufacturing enterprises, and most of them are small and medium companies with less than 100 employees. So, and a lot of those are making parts, equipment, so we have a tendency to glorify advanced technology. But in fact, most of our manufacturing capability is not in what we would call kind of the glorified, startup-y kinds of tech things.
Right, sure.
You
had guys who were in the textile business who were making Q-tips, for example, and they were counted on by Peter Navarro to make PPE and masks and other things for equipment for the to shore up supplies during the pandemic. Doug, one last question. How do people find you if they want to learn more about Industry Reimagined?
Terrific. So how people can find me is our website is www.industryreimagined2030 or ir2030.org. And, by the end of the year, we're going to have another 15 national organizations and policy and research organizations and corporate leadership bodies collaborating with us. And we invite listeners to participate with us.
Great. Doug, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Good to see you again. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Ken. And thank you and CPA for the great work that you're doing.
Great. We'll keep at it.